Good morning and welcome to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee meeting. Let me, on behalf of the PAEC, warmly welcome officials from the Ministry of Finance, Investments Division, the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, the Estate Management Development Company Limited, EMBD, members of the media, and of course, the public. May I advise very early that this meeting is being held in public and is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM, as well as the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's topic via our email, that is parl101@ttparliament.org, facebook.com/ttparliament, Twitter @ttparliament. May I also indicate the purpose of our meeting today. The purpose of this meeting of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to examine audited accounts, balance sheet, and other financial statements of the Estate Management Business Development Company Limited for the period 2008 to 2010. Our committee is desirous of hearing from the key stakeholders at the EMBD to learn of the challenges being faced by your organization and to determine some of the possible solutions and measures to overcome these challenges. The role of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee is to help the EMBD improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. May I repeat? This is not an inquisition. Our role as a committee is to help, to assist the EMBD improve its delivery of services in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. May I take this opportunity, first of all, to invite members of this committee to introduce themselves, followed by members of the Investments Division, followed by the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, followed by the Estate Management. So I will start on my extreme right and ask my distinguished colleague to introduce herself, and we go in that order.
Good morning. I am Shamfa Kojo, member of the committee.
Good morning, everyone. My name is David Small. I'm a member of the committee.
Good morning. Welcome to all of you. I'm Tim Gopi Singh, Vice Chair of the committee.
Well, good morning once again. My name is Wade Mark, Chairman of the committee.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. I am Jennifer Batiste Primus, and I'm a member of this committee.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Foster Cummings, member of the committee. Good morning. My name is Yvette Bab, Acting Director, Social and Economic Transformation, Ministry of Finance, Investment Division.
Good morning. I'm Sharon Mohammed, Director, Agro-Based Manufacturing and Service Sector, Acting, Ministry of Finance, Investments Division.
Hi, good morning. My name is Varuna Ramdial, Senior Audit Analyst at the Ministry of Finance Investments Division.
Good morning. I am Angela Sue, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries.
Good morning. I'm Neela Maraj, Acting Director, Agricultural Planning Division, Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries.
Good morning. Ramesh Kaya, Accountant Executive 2, Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Resources. Fisheries, sorry.
Good morning, Shamir Roni Mohammed, Chairman, Estate Management and Business Development Company Limited.
Good morning, I am Cherise Bangouche, Acting Chief Executive Officer of EMBD.
Good morning, Ricardo O'Brien, Chief Financial Officer of the EMBD.
Hi, good morning. Prakash Kaulasa, Director of EMBD.
Good morning. Trisha Beckles, Director, EMBD.
Good morning. My name is Marissa Ramnarayan Singh Zora, Senior Attorney at Law at EMBD.
Good morning. I'm Khalil Baksh, Project Manager at EMBD.
Good morning. I am Cassian James, Corporate Communications Manager / Community Relations Officer at the Estate Management Business Development Company.
Good morning, everyone. I am Denise Nez, Manager, Land Administration, EMBD.
Good morning, everyone. Cecil Santana, I'm the Security Manager at EMBD.
Good morning, everyone. Dullar Ramlal, Quarry Mining / Environmental Health and Safety Manager.
Well, thank you all. And may I again, on behalf of the PAEC, warmly welcome all of you to this public inquiry and hearing into the activities of the EMBD for the period identified earlier. May I at this time invite the distinguished chairman of the EMBD to make some brief opening remarks.
Chairman and members of the Public Accounts Committee, I wish to take this opportunity to thank you for convening this session. The EMBD welcomes this reporting mechanism to the national community via the Parliament and is pleased to share with those present and the country's citizens pertinent information as it relates to the accounts and the affairs of EMBD for the period 2008 to 2010. While neither the board nor the majority of staff here today were engaged at EMBD for the period under review, it should be noted that the team has conscientiously attempted to prepare and as best as practically possible for this session. Our representatives today will endeavor, wherever possible, to provide the committee with any information required for the period under review. Thank you.
Yes, well, we want to thank you, Mr. Mohammed, for, as you said, making the effort to provide the committee with as much information as possible, even though you and your team would not have been around during the period that we are examining. So we want to thank you in advance for your cooperation. I would like to begin by asking the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture for clarification on some issues. But I want to do this against the background of the financial regulations. And all of us would be aware that in accordance with Part 1, Section 4, on page 37 of the financial regulations, it states, and I quote, "An accounting officer shall be responsible for ensuring that the financial business of the state for which he is responsible is properly conducted, he or she that is, and that the public funds entrusted to his or her care are properly safeguarded and are applied only to the purposes intended by the Parliament. End of quote, insofar as Regulation 30, Regulation 4, Part 1, Section 4, on page 37 of your financial regulations. When I look at the estimates, a review of the estimates of recurrent expenditure showing annual allocation to the EMBD, it tells the following story. Whilst we are looking at 208 to 210, we have to be mindful of the realities that we are faced with in the period that we are living in. So we are not going to be just confined to 2010, 2008 to 2010. I observed that in 2016, the estimates, that is the government subvention, was $25.6 million. The revised estimate in 2016 turned out to be 19 million. And we observed in 2017, the estimate is some 16 million. So for the period 2016 to 2017, the total allocation of government subvention to the EMBD is in the sum of $35 million. The first question I would like the Permanent Secretary to take note of and to respond to is this. How does the Permanent Secretary account for these funds? $35 million. The second area I would like you to clarify for us is as follows. How does the Permanent Secretary, as the accounting officer, ensure accountability and transparency in performing her role and responsibility in monitoring this enterprise called the EMBD to ensure the following? The proper system of accounting as prescribed by the Treasury is established and maintained. Exercise supervision over the receipt of public revenue. And make proper provision for the safekeeping of public money. That is, so I hope that the Permanent Secretary has taken note of those areas I'd like you to clarify. A third area I'd like you to clarify. In fact, maybe at this point I'll ask you to respond to those issues, and there are some further clarification I would seek in a short while. So I turn the floor over to the Permanent Secretary on this matter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As you are aware, the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries has oversight for the EMBD. We, as a ministry, support the mandate of the EMBD. We provide technical supervision with regard to the planning, monitoring and evaluation, etc. In the Ministry of Agriculture, we have an officer who we permanently assign to the EMBD. That officer would receive all financial transactions that may occur at the EMBD. What happens there is that the documents come to us, and this officer, in an effort to ensure that the funds are utilized for the purpose that is intended, the project is aligned with targets, right? A certain value for money. They would review the documents and tender documents, make sure that all the documents that are supposed to be submitted are submitted. For example, cabinet minutes that would have given approval for the project or whatever the item is. And they would go through that to ensure that everything is above board, right? And the money allocated for that particular, let's say it's a particular phase, that it aligns with what is in the contract. Apart from that, in the monitoring and evaluation, this officer also, together with an officer or officers of the engineering division, would go out together with the M&E, representatives from the M&E, Ministry of Planning, and also the budget division, finance, to make site visits, one, to see the progress of the project, two, to ascertain whether we are getting value for money, and I mean the service delivery, it's up to standard, right? Also to have a general sense of what is happening with projects. Apart from that, monthly cash statements are sent to us for our review. So that this will indicate how monies are spent, right? So we have the opportunity to review that. Also, board minutes are reviewed confirmed board minutes, that is, are reviewed to assist us in knowing what is happening at the EMBD, what decisions have been taken, and whether the decisions taken are in keeping with what is required. So that generally is what we do to ensure, that the finances and so are.
Yeah. Madam Permanent Secretary, you did made mention of an officer assigned by the Ministry of Agriculture.
From the planning unit.
The planning unit.
From our planning unit.
To have some kind of oversight responsibility at the level of the EMBD, so that you would be aware. How long has this arrangement, as far as you could recall, has been in place?
It is an arrangement not only for EMBD, but all the bodies that are under us. As far as I'm aware, as far back as 2011, right, that arrangement has been on for EMBD for the times that they have been with us.
And would you indicate to this committee whether you are satisfied with the arrangement as it relates to the ministry's oversight of the EMBD? Are you satisfied with this arrangement?
Well, not totally satisfied. There's always room for improvement, but we have to work with what we have. The officer who is assigned to EMBD, in the instances where additional assistance is needed, we have other members of staff who join in for two purposes: one, to assist him, and two, for them to be familiar with what is to be done. So in the event, in the public service, you have people moving to other ministries for acting positions and so on. So we try to have people, become aware of, of what is the process and the procedure.
Would you want to share with this committee any measures that you would have taken to improve this arrangement in terms of the oversight arrangement?
Well, we plan to have a projects review committee for the ministry who would specifically be established to look at
Yes, continue, ma'am.
Yeah, to look at proposals presented for development projects, and their job would be to assess whether it is in line with policy and sectoral goals. Apart from that, we are in the process of establishing a monitoring and evaluation unit for the entire ministry, not only for EMB, but the entire ministry. And that unit would be populated with additional people to assist us in doing the monitoring and evaluation.
Would you want to share with this committee, with this oversight responsibility of this member from the planning unit, would you want to share with us why there has been no financial audited accounts for the period 2011 to 2015 from the EMBD? Would you say that, for instance, something is radically adrift at this organization? What is accountable? What is responsible for this development? Madam Permanent Secretary, could you share with us?
Well, when the question was presented to us, we found it a bit difficult to really pinpoint the answers to that, having regard that most of us weren't there at the time. But if we look at EMBD's movement from ministry to ministry, there may be instances where you may also have movement of people out of the EMBD, right? And also, so that institutional memory would have gone with them. It may also be that there may have been some lack of oversight. There may be another reason, it could be. And it may also be that the EMBD in themselves may not have understood what is their role in terms of that, right? And as a result, would not have complied.
Before I ask Mrs. Batiste to come in and later Mr. Small, Madam Permanent Secretary, I know that you are new to the job that you are now in charge of, the office, but we are talking about possibly hundreds of millions of taxpayers' dollars that have been allocated to this company over the years. And it is unacceptable, indefensible, inexcusable for the Parliament of the Republic not to have sight of the financial audited accounts of this organization for the period under review. That is 2011 to 2015. We have between 2008, 2010, but none for 2011 to 2015, up to 2016. I don't know if Mr. Mohammed, who is new again to this exercise, along with you, Madam Permanent Secretary, could give this committee the undertaking as to how soon we would be able to expect those accounts to be sent to the Ministry of Finance and onward to the Parliament, so that this committee could examine the financial audited accounts of the EMBD for the period that I've identified. I don't know if Mr. Neil Mohammed would like to go first, and then you would like to follow.
Okay, yeah. Well, Mr. Mohammed would be able to better explain, but some of those accounts have been audited. Mr. Mohammed will fill you in on the details.
Chair, if you allow me, please. The period under review, and I'd just like to provide a bit of background and update, if I can. Accounts dated, our financial year ends on September 30th of each year. The accounts for 2008 was audited and finalized by a previous board in November 2009. The accounts for 2009 was completed and finalized on 6th of May 2011. The accounts for 2010 was completed in May of 2012. And I will speak now in relation to 2011 and 2012 on to 2015. The entire backlog of these accounts, it's required under the State Enterprise Performer Manual as well. And we, as a board coming into EMBD in November 2015, we identified that this is an aspect that needs to be urgently attended to. We proceeded to have the auditors come in and continue preparing the audited financial statements. And in January of 2017, the board would have signed off not just 2011 and 2012 accounts. And I guess that is probably on its way to the Parliament. In relation to 2013, 14, and 15, we have completed almost 90% of the work that is required on those years. And as we speak, RFPs are out for auditing firms to submit proposals to complete those. We have to have an AGM to appoint the auditors, and as soon as the Ministry of Finance, as soon as the team at EMBD evaluates the submissions of those auditing firms, we will engage the Ministry of Finance to have an AGM so that we could immediately proceed to have those 3 years, that is 13, 14, and 15, completed. We anticipate, based on the amount of work previously done, that within the next 6 months, we can submit those 3 years to our line ministry.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. I would like to go back to Madam Permanent Secretary just to clarify 1 or 2 areas. The officer who is assigned oversight to EMBD, what is the position of this officer?
He's a senior project analyst.
And therefore, in your consideration, is that officer competent enough to conduct the necessary oversight over the projects that you said that that officer does?
Yes, he is. Additionally, as I said before, we also have representatives from our engineering division who would go out and look at the physical status of the project. And there's a collaboration between the representative from the engineering division and the senior project analyst to assess the project, as well as it's a standard procedure with regard to the documents that are reviewed, what is required to be submitted if they have been submitted. We have our spreadsheet with what has been spent, what is to be spent, and for what, right? And from that, we know what our balance is and so on.
Is that officer here today?
No, he's not.
Is the ministry considering the establishment of a monitoring and evaluation unit? Because one person cannot, by any stretch of the imagination, have the ability to have that level of oversight over an organization as the EMBD?
Yes. So as I said before, yes, that was one of the things that we are putting forward, a monitoring and evaluation unit to assist with that. We're going to want to populate that so that we'll have more people assisting the senior project analysts. As I also said before, even though this person is permanently assigned, where the need arises, we also have other persons within the planning unit that would assist him.
Trained persons or just merely support?
But they are project officers.
Okay.
So.
On the issue of the minutes, you indicated that minutes are reviewed to assess the decisions taken. What is the time frame within which minutes, confirmed minutes, are forwarded for the attention of yourself, who is now the permanent secretary? Mm-hmm. What is the time frame?
Normally
after meetings are held, what's the time frame for those minutes to be sent on to you all?
Well, since I've been there, EMBD, they have been getting ministers within 2 to 3 weeks after the meeting.
Okay. Well, 2 to 3 weeks seems reasonable, because if minutes are not delivered within a timely framework, then the oversight from your ministry would not really be on the ball. So the 2 or 3 weeks, I'm satisfied with that, Mr. Chairman. The officer not there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the opportunity. Thank you, members, again, for allowing me to be able to interject at this point in time. If you permit me, Mr. Chairman, I continue to be concerned when I hear from ministries that they have challenges with the relationships between themselves and entities. And this is something that really needs something needs to be done about that. I want to direct my first question, Mr. Chairman, if you permit me, to the Permanent Secretary. In your in response to Minister Baptiste Primus, I have a question. How often would you say that your team or your senior team or yourself would meet with EMBD on an annual basis?
Well, actually, we have discussions, verbal discussions, over the phone. In terms of meeting, we have met based on an issue that arose in January, I believe, the end of January was the last time that we met.
The reason I'm asking, Madam Permanent Secretary, because I think that this is a significant entity, and I would have thought that the line ministry would have, at least at the beginning of the year, meet with the entity to discuss what their plans are for the year that is going to begin, so the ministry could be up to speed with what are the key strategic activities of the company for the year coming. Is this something that the ministry does on a routine basis, or is it, as you've just described, an issue comes up and then that generates a reason for a meeting?
Okay, to answer that, with regard, well, since I've been there, EMBD has been sending the board minutes and whatever. Now, in terms of their activity, they have only been given a recurrent subvention for this financial year. So with regard to that, we would get the information from them on their spending. But in terms of projects and so on, it would really be based on what they're reviewing now, because they're doing some audits and so on, as they explained before. But in terms of meeting on a regular basis, it really would be based on issues that would have come up.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Permanent Secretary. The long answer you gave is no. And that's the issue that I am flagging, that I do not subscribe to the view that the aligned ministry can have an entity be under them and not meet with them to understand what their plans are. The question asked by Minister Baptiste Pripus about the time frame between decisions and when you are aware. If you have a shape at the beginning of a period for what the plans of the entity are, by the time you get the minutes, you are not seeing it for the first time. You would understand that this is something on the schedule. So I would like to suggest to the chair that this is something that the ministry consider. That, and I know it happens in other ministries where they have at least biannual meetings with key state entities under their portfolio. What are your current plans? Let us keep us up to speed, keep the Permanent Secretary and the Minister informed of what are the current plans, and make sure that we're not trying to stop you from doing what you have to do, but at least keep the line ministry informed. Mr. Chair, will you permit me, I have one other follow-up question. I don't want to belabor the point, but this complete breakdown in oversight regarding financial accounts at the entity, and then it seems to be exacerbated by the lack of any strong will by the line ministry to enforce what is clearly outlined in the framework regarding management and monitoring of state enterprises. I continue to struggle with that, Mr. Chairman, and I don't understand why we're in a place here in April 2017 looking at accounts of 2008 to 2010. And that is a statement that I am not happy about that, and I want to put that on the record. That is something that is absolutely unacceptable. Mr. Chairman, I have a question here regarding and it comes directly back to my first point. In the submission by EMBD, it's on page 7 of your submission, you made a comment, and I am addressing this to the chairman. I want to quote the comment. EMBD continues to grapple with a gap in strategic alliances with its line ministry and other agencies, which impacts on its ability to do its work more efficiently. Could you explain what that means, Mr. Chairman?
Member, generally, an organization's strategic plan is somewhat aligned to the ministry that it is reporting to. And the history of EMBD shows that we would have been moved around over several ministries, and therefore it is somewhat difficult to pinpoint exactly what your strategic objective should be if you do not have any level of certainty in terms of where you should reside. And for example, from August 2002 to 2010, we reported to the Ministry of Finance. Then from August 2010 to 2012, we fell under the Ministry of Food Production, Land and Marine Affairs. In July 2012 to September 2015, we were under the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. Then in September 2015 to present, we're now back at the Ministry of Agriculture. EMBD strategic function, as far as I am aware, is simply to fulfill, or primary objective should be to fulfill the mandate given, which is to provide the commitments made by the government in relation to the VSEP commitments to the currently 1975 workers. And that is what we continue to focus on as our key objective. But in the absence of being before, in the absence of or having been across 4 ministries over the last 5 years, have presented a challenge in determining a strat plan.
Mr. Chairman, if it permit me, the chairman of the committee raised an issue of the strategic plan. If it permit me, Mr. Chairman, I just have one quick follow-up regarding the plan. This is at the beginning of your submission here. My question is regarding the strategic plan. Did the company do a review regarding this 2010 to 2014 plan? Was there any review done as to the extent to which the company achieved the objectives outlined in the 2010 to 2014 plan? The reason I'm asking that, Mr. Chairman, as you'd be aware, if you make a plan, you at least should, at the end of that plan period, be able to assess whether or not the company has met its key objectives or there are gaps that cause you, or challenges that cause you to not meet those plans, and those things that need to be addressed in the current plan going forward. So I would like to understand, if possible, someone can say or share with me on this committee, in the review of the performance of the company based on the 2010 to 2014 plan, was a review done? And if that review done, what is the result of that review?
Member, as I would have said in my opening statement, many of the persons here would not have been with the organization during that time. I would say that what I have been told is that that strat plan was never confirmed. It was merely a draft. And therefore, I am not sure whether or not one should be pursuing something that is now, long gone, still in its draft form.
Just one final item. I accept your response, Mr. Chairman, and therein lies the problem, that we have an entity operating with a draft plan, no accounts prepared, taxpayers' money, we're not able to account for taxpayers' money. This thing is just floating around in cyberspace. We can't have entities operating like this. So I understand your particular situation, Mr. Chairman, you've just come in, but for the purpose of this committee, this is a problem that we have seen repeated time after time. And as the line ministry is here, this is a problem I'm sure the line ministry is well aware of. We have to work out a plan to deal with this. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent. There's no plan for how the company is supposed to operate. And then worse, there's no accountability for the money. Mr. Chairman, I see to other members.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is meant for the Ministry of Agriculture. Can you give an appreciation at a national level? What is the total acreage for agriculture, defined for agriculture, for Trinidad and Tobago? What is the total acreage meant for agriculture? How much of that is under the control of the Commissioner of State Lands? How many acreage of that is under control still by Caroni, if Caroni still exists? And of course, by EMBD. If we can get some answers to that from a national perspective, the country I have been asking that for a long time. Where are we in terms of agricultural acreage nationally, and how is it divided in terms of the responsibilities for these acreages?
Okay, I'm unable to give you the figures I can't recall the figures offhand, but I know with regard to EMBD, we have about 77,000 acres for the agricultural you asked about?
Yes, agricultural lands.
Okay. We have just over 3,000 agricultural plots under EMBD. With regard to the national scale, I don't have the figures. I can't recall the figures now, but I can present it to the committee.
How much land is EMBD responsible for?
The total number of agricultural plots is 3,000.
No, not the plots, the land, the acreage.
77,000 acres.
All right. So from the 77,000 acres, I have it here, page 5 of 32, EMBD continues to secure 77,000 acres of state land from squatting, encroachment, etc. And on the previous page, so you're not able to give us the information how many acreage for agriculture nationally. If 77,000 is what EMBD is responsible for, what are the other agencies that are responsible for agricultural lands in the country? As Permanent Secretary.
Apart from the Ministry of Agriculture?
No. Ministry of Agriculture is responsible for all agricultural lands. It comes under your remit.
Yes.
And EMBD is one of the agencies responsible for 77,000 acres of this land. What are the other agencies that are responsible for agricultural lands, and give us an approximate acreage of how much each of these other agencies are responsible? If you can't answer, Madam Permanent Secretary, perhaps I don't know if your colleagues will probably be able to. Anybody?
We have the Land Settlement Agency as well, who's responsible for lands, but we don't have the, I really don't have the figures.
May I ask you, in your leadership position for agriculture at a national level, to be seized of that information, because decisions cannot be made in the absence of an overall picture. You must understand where we are as a country, how much land is for EMBD, how much land the Director of State Lands responsible for, how much the Land Settlement Agency is responsible for, how much is Caroni responsible for. So if it is possible, if you don't have it now, could you send that for us, so that I'm sure the media would like to know that, the people of this country want to know that, because here it is, we have the country's land divided in agricultural areas. Some are reserves, and some are for residential, and some are for commercial business.
I will provide that information to the committee.
Now, coming to the 77,000 acres that you said you're responsible for, how much of that has been utilized for residential developments for the Caroni VSEP workers? As you said on page 3, the priority projects for EMBD are the residential developments for the Caroni VSEP workers. Do you have that document before you, which you submitted to us? Yes? And the second area is the EMBD's other major priority remains facilitating increased domestic food security through land developments. With respect to the first, for the VSEP workers, you said that there are 5,056 lots, which really is 1,014 acreage completed. And on the next page, so in total, you have a number that are ongoing and substantially complete and approvals outstanding, which came up to the difference between 5,000 and 6,700, so approximately 1,200. So altogether, have the first 5,056 lots that was for residential developments for Caroni VSEP workers, how many of that have been distributed to the Caroni workers from the VSEP program? That should be at your fingertips.
You're referring to the document submitted by EMBD?
Yes, your document here that you submitted.
Yes. That's EMBD's document.
All right. Well, no, the answer, but you are a committee, Agriculture, EMBD, so can EMBD answer the question?
Member, if I can attempt to answer that question.
But did you send a copy to the ministry of this document?
Yes.
Well, you're coming before committee. The ministry should be seized of the committee and walk with the armamentarium for answering questions. Does anybody from the Ministry of Agriculture have this document, which EMBD submitted to us? If I would refer you to page 3 of 32, you have 5,056 plots that have been completed. How many have been distributed to the former Caroni workers under the visa program?
What page are you on?
Page 3.
Member, may I please?
Yes.
In relation to the agriculture parcels, if I can deal with that firstly.
No, I'm asking about residential developments first. Page 3,
But I
EMBD
would-
are the residential developments for Caroni visa workers. And you have a summary, 5,056 plots, and the acreage for that is 1,014 acreage. How many of those 5,056 residential development plots have been allocated already to Caroni visa workers?
Remember, we are responsible for developing, and therefore we would have developed 5,056 plots which have been completed, and that would have been handed over to Caroni 1979 Limited, for 1975 Limited, sorry, for allocation and distribution. We are not in a position to say
give
how
that
much
answer.
of that would have been distributed, except to say what we would have developed on their behalf.
But if you have completed it, there must be it wouldn't be completed and laying in abeyance there. You must know what has happened to it having completed it. Are you not responsible for it still until it is handed over?
No, we are responsible for developing and
After
handing
you have developed
over.
it, what happens?
You
leave it?
hand the site over to Caroni to distribute
Have you
to the
handed over these
beneficiary.
5,056 plots?
Yes.
All right. So we will have to ask Caroni 75 Limited. Could you get that information from us, for us, Permanent Secretary? Yeah, that's one.
Remember, if I can, in a comment you made at page 5 of our submission, I asked the committee to note that the EMBD is only responsible, and the only tenure we have would be for those agricultural sites that we have a head lease for, which would be Caroni, Edinburgh, Felicity, Jenningham Junction, La Fortune, Picton, La Gloria. Outside of those parcels, that we are not responsible for those lands, except to say in relation to the 76,000 acres that we refer to in our submission, we do not have any ownership or title. We are only responsible for securing those lands from squatting, encroachment, illegal cultivation, and predial larceny.
But that is very strange. If you don't have ownership or a sense of being responsible for it, how can you move on to state that you're responsible for squatting, encroachment, illegal cultivation, and predial larceny? If you are stating that you are not responsible for it, except that, how can you be responsible for it if you don't? How can you engage in those activities if you are not responsible for it? And you're doing something illegal.
Member, I will ask that we go back to the act that created EMBD.
No, you submitted this, sir.
Yes.
You submitted this document, and you said originally that you have 77,000 acres of land, of state land under your watch.
Yes.
And are you now coming to say that it's not under your watch, but you're responsible for preventing squatting, encroachment, illegal cultivation, and predial larceny?
No, I'm saying it is under our watch to prevent these from happening.
I'm saying if you said that you're not responsible for the 77,000 acres of land, how could you be responsible for this if it is not within your so-called responsibility or ownership? This is what is giving some difficulty, but think it through your mind and you'll respond to it.
Yes.
Now, I just want to ask, Chair, the last part of this. You said a number of these plots are still ongoing and works have been suspended. Some have been substantially complete and some approvals outstanding. And that is approximately 5,000 to 11,000, about 6,000 lots. Could you give us an idea? 6,780. Could you give us an idea what is the status of those? Residential development plots for Caroni visa workers, 6,780 plots.
Yes, Mr. Mohammed.
That's on page 4 of your document you submitted.
Remember, several of those sites, as the document states, that works would have been substantially completed. And what remains outstanding would be the statutory approvals from the various agencies.
Yeah, that's a vague answer. Could you give us almost a complete definition? How many of these plots have been completed out of the 6,780? And how many of these works have suspended? And how many approvals outstanding? If you can give us that.
Can we submit that subsequently?
Huh?
Can we provide that subsequently
Yeah, sure.
in writing?
Yes, I would suggest that you do so. You have any further, because I want to go on to Shamfa.
Right, good.
Shamfa, you could go on, and I'll go back to that.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, we can go on all day about who's responsible for how many acres of land, but my challenge with EMBD over the past, I would say at least 9 years, is EMBD, as small as an entity it is with major responsibility, manages, or should I say have a strong record of recklessness and mismanagement. Reading reports where contracts would have started at $67 million and came up to $334 million in variation. Several contracts starting at $66 million and find its way up to $659 million. My question really is, what kind of rules and regulations, what strategies, what's available within the organization as it relates to procurement, project management, managing public funds, and also at the level of the ministry through the permanent secretary and the officers on board to properly provide the necessary oversight for EMBD. My second question has to do with a recent contract or project somewhere in the vicinity of $400 million to build roads in the cane fields, I think given to about 5 contractors. Where are we with that work? Since development of this property for which you have oversight or you have the responsibility to develop falls squarely under your purview, these monies that have been given out in contracts and this work that we have entrusted these contractors to do, where are we in the completion of these projects, and what kind of regulations do you have on hand to ensure that you get value for money, that these projects come up to what it was budgeted to be? Because I cannot see how you can give a contract for $66 million and then it transforms into $659 million more in variations. Over the years, EMBD has been coming up with 1.5, in some cases, $2-3 billion in variations, and I want to know what is being done or what has been done. Do you have a strong financial team on board? Do you have auditors on board? If you have one, how long has that auditor been on board? Just explain to us how you really manage public finances, please.
Yes, who would like to answer? Ministry of Agriculture or the EMBD chairman? EMBD, you'd like to respond?
My question really, as it relates to oversight, is to the permanent secretary. She would have mentioned that there is a system in the ministry to provide oversight, and where was that system over the years, and what's happening now, and even within the company and from the ministry also, what's happening in the project management and procurement? I don't understand in recent times the authority, or should I say the autonomy given to a chairman of a board of directors to sign off these variations without the directors knowing, and so on. The practice, or should I say the culture in the EMBD, probably like so many other state enterprises, is chronic. It's like a cancer, and we could spend hours discussing what happened then, but what is happening now in our recent past, and what are we doing now to prevent these things from happening again? I read the Hansard in the Parliament where in 2014, we were asking, where are the audited financial documents for 2013, 2012, 2011? And here we are in 2017, with a couple more years added to the same years that we were asking about. So are we really a committee interrogating and investigating and looking out for the best interest of the country, or are we playing committee? We playing parliament? So that really is my challenge, because sometimes it feels like we meet as a formality. Because if we meet and we talk and we ask these questions and we ask for certain regulations and rules and strategies to be implemented and come back 5, 4, 3 years after and asking the same questions, this is a waste of time, a waste of public funds, and I really want to know, where are we going as it relates to managing public funds and public property?
Okay, all right. Madam Permanent Secretary.
As far as I'm aware, whenever there are variations to a contract, that has to go to Cabinet for its approval, right? So that once the documents and so come to us and we recognize that there's a variation in the contract, right? We're supposed to do a Cabinet note for it to go to Cabinet. I do not, I'm not aware of what happened in other ministries, right? When they were under us in 2011, 2010, 2011, we would have had oversight over that, right? And we would have been looking at these things, variations. You could recall whether any variations. As far as I'm aware, that is the procedure with regard to variations.
But I do have a question, because, and I'm sorry to jump right in, because state enterprises don't create Cabinet notes. A state enterprise cannot send a note to the Cabinet.
So that's what I just said.
That's what I'm saying. At what point in time this monitoring and evaluation system in the ministry kicks in, and the permanent secretary and all its different facilities kick in to provide the necessary advice and oversight, when you see a contract increase by 1,000% or more?
Right, so once that comes to us, that is what we do. We prepare a note for Cabinet. Now, there may be instances where it hasn't reached us. There may be instances it hasn't reached us or reached the ministry. And with the changing of the ministry, the EMBD going to another ministry, it may not have been picked up there.
So,
right?
So are you saying then that these inconsistencies that we now question, there's a Cabinet note and minute sitting somewhere giving authority to these increases in these contracts from?
No, I'm saying no, there isn't. That is what should have happened with regard to variations.
Right, so then that takes us back to the necessary oversight that should be provided to the board of directors, the company, from the permanent secretary's office.
Yes.
How did that slip us?
It's difficult for me to answer the question with regard to what happened in the past.
Okay,
but I know that when things like that come to us, right? That is the procedure that is to be taken. More than that, it cannot go anywhere, because it has to go through the budget division, and the budget division would not pass something like that without the proper approvals.
Okay, Permanent Secretary, how long have you been at the Ministry of Agriculture, may I ask?
8 months.
8 months, okay. Well, let's speak about something more recent, because we don't want to be faced with a committee again some months down the road and say, we didn't know we were not there. Right now, we have a situation where there's road development in cane fields on the said property. Contracts given to about 5 contractors in the amount of $400 million or somewhere thereabout. And this work has been going on for about 2 years. Are these projects on time? Are we getting value for money? What's happening there? What kind of oversight is being provided right now as it relates to auditing and project management and so on within the entity now? Do we have auditors on board? Do we have a strong financial team to really monitor how public funds are being managed? What's happening now? You're saying that you can't answer for what happened then, and we are still cleaning up what happened then. What's happening now to prevent these things from happening again?
Which one would just take out here? Right. Yeah. Yes, Madam Permanent Secretary.
At present, those projects are being audited, among others. The results of those audits we are supposed to get in the near future. So basically, that is the status of. Basically, that is the status of that. EMBD, they have been engaging auditors, right, so that could be looked at.
One follow-up question, please, PS, through you, Chairman. EMBD does not release monies to itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
It must come from the ministry.
Right.
The ministry doesn't release money to itself. The ministry doesn't release monies to itself. It depends on the Ministry of Finance.
Right.
So where is the oversight and the accountability in watching contracts and projects move from 66 million to 659, from 33 million to 370 something? When EMBD makes that request to the ministry, then the permanent secretary ensures the money is provided. Where is the oversight in asking how, why, when? Is this making sense to us? And then even from the station of the permanent secretary in asking that to finance, nobody in the whole line pick up that something is wrong? And if that has happened then, what's in place now to prevent that from happening again? How do we just give money to EMBD freely and don't ask what happened or how did the bill increase? I'm confused. Help me.
I, as a permanent secretary, would not allow that to go forward. Because once there are variations, there are not proper approvals for that. And the approval of cabinet must be sought, right? And any event, even if we were trying to slip that in to go to the Ministry of Finance, they would not accept it because there are no proper approvals. So even if at the ministry level it slips in, at the Ministry of Finance level, it would not be entertained.
There is a point, Foster.
My question is not many questions, but I will start with the head office, and this question is directed to the EMBD. I'm seeing here where the head office moved from Valsale to a bungalow at Bushing Castle. And your response on page 9, it says that there is a license agreement from the Commissioner of State Lands, and the license agreement is currently being reviewed. Could you give some clarification on that, tying your response to the fact that you did some work on the building? I'm assuming I'm seeing here a $16 million expenditure. Could someone just give some clarification on that?
Remember, the present head office of EMBD is situated at bungalow number 59, Bridgeon Castle. My understanding is that the previous board would have taken a decision to relocate the offices from Val Park Shopping Plaza to that site. EMBD holds, as far as I'm aware, no tenure because what was provided was a license agreement, which I believe might be expired at this point in time. What we have done is we have asked the Commissioner of State Lands to actually proceed or assist EMBD in getting a lease for that property, which will give us some security. In relation to the expenditure for the relocation of the office and development of that bungalow, it was in the vicinity of approximately $16.5 million. 16.5 million.
So are you saying, Mr. Chairman, that the previous board undertook this expenditure and there is no tenure to the property?
Correct.
Okay. In terms of the internal audit function, could you indicate to us what is in place at EMBD in terms of an internal audit function?
Our records indicate that EMBD was without an internal auditor since 2013. The board, yes, 2013, until our appointment, there was no internal auditor at EMBD. I'm happy to report that we have recruited someone who will be joining the organization within 2 weeks.
In your response, I saw that the board retained PricewaterhouseCoopers to perform an audit. Who's the chief financial officer? Yes. I don't have it in front of me now, but in reading the document, I know I passed. Could someone give us?
So the scope of work in a general form that PwC was retained related to the award of certain contracts for 10 bypass roads in or around the amount of, and this would have been in mid-2015. Those contracts was awarded to 5 contractors. The sums would have been in or around $400 million.
How much is that? 400 million?
$400 million. And the scope of PwC would include to ascertain whether or not there was any fraud, bid rigging, cost overruns, variations, quality and quantity of works.
Can I ask further? I understand from your previous statement that the EMBD primary responsibility is to develop residential and agricultural plots for the VSEP package for Caroni workers, and that insofar as the 75,000 acres is concerned, that for the parts of that land that does not fall within that responsibility, you just have responsibility for security and making sure that there are no squatters and so forth on the lands, right? So that this decision to construct these bypass roads, where does that fall within the responsibility of the EMBD?
Remember, I can only speak to what we found. I cannot answer how or why it ended up at the doorsteps of EMBD.
Would you agree that that falls outside of the responsibility of the EMBD? So that the EMBD taking a decision to construct these bypass roads when they did, that in fact that does not fall as part of the responsibility for the EMBD. Do you agree with that?
I will be somewhat cautious in my approach to answering this question, except to say that if you have received an instruction from your line ministry to undertake certain works, subject to the respective approvals, be it cabinet or otherwise, one may have no option but to execute the mandate of your line ministry.
I've read somewhere around that you had a change in CEO. Well, the report says that your Chief Executive Officer, Gary Parmasa, was sent on leave. Is this as a consequence of the report submitted by PricewaterhouseCoopers?
I can confirm that Mr. Parmasa was sent on leave in February of 2015 to facilitate the audit being conducted, and 2016, February of 2016. I can also confirm that last Friday was the last working day for Mr. Parmasa at EMBD.
Final question to the Permanent Secretary. In light of all the information, Permanent Secretary, that we have gone through this morning in relation to the conduct of EMBD in fulfilling its mandate, and you did indicate that there is one officer from the ministry responsible for oversight for EMBD. What is the ministry currently putting in place to ensure that what appears to have been a runaway horse in the past, that we don't have a recurrence of these types of activities?
Okay, as I said, even though we have said that it's one person responsible for the oversight, there's a very robust procedure in what is presented to us for us to agree to send forward to finance for releases, etc. So that there has to be certain documents, right, presented to us for our review. Once there are things missing, we cannot send it forward. And even if we attempt to send it forward, the Ministry of Finance will turn it down. Right, so that procedure, the procedure, I think, even though it's one person, is a sound one. Because nothing can go forward unless we have those particular documents and everything is in place and monies to be spent, monies that they're asking for is really for the purpose that it was intended.
Madam Permanent Secretary, I think that Mrs. Kojo raised some issues earlier. Also, Mr. Foster Cummings. Would you be blunt with this committee and indicate to this committee, is there a forensic audit currently taking place into the EMBD? If there is such a forensic audit, which accounting firm is doing it, and how soon can the public expect the findings and recommendations of this forensic audit to be made public, so this so-called runaway horse called the EMBD could be corralled? Could you share with this committee what is the reality?
All right. Given this issue is a particularly sensitive one, we would prefer if we provide it in writing and not in public.
No problem if you want to submit it in writing, but the question is, Could you tell us an answer? We don't want to go into details, but could you tell this committee whether there is a forensic audit into the operations of the EMBD? Is that a yes or no? And then you can then put whatever you have to put in writing subsequently.
Not the entire operations.
Aspects of it.
Aspects of it.
And you'll want to put those things in writing.
Please.
Okay. All right. May I ask the investment division of the Ministry of Finance this question? I think the only constant in this whole situation is the investments division of the Ministry of Finance. It hasn't gone anywhere. We have seen what has happened with the EMBD. Directors have gone, staff gone, senior management gone, a number of activities gone. And there's no accountability based on what we are being told. I would like to ask the investment division, which is responsible for the oversight of these state entities, including EMBD, but specifically relating to the EMBD, were you aware that no internal auditor existed at the EMBD between the period 2013 to 2015? And if you were aware, what recommendations would that body have made to the respective agencies overseeing that body, agriculture, and the EMBD? Could the Ministry of Finance Investments Division clarify for this committee the situation that I've outlined?
Chair, we were not aware that there was no internal auditor at the EMBD.
But then the question here is that, is the investment division, does the investment division have the capacity to carry out the monitoring and oversight functions so critically important for these state entities to remain in line in accordance with the state manual, the state enterprise performance manual? How can the investments division, if you are properly monitoring and carrying out oversight responsibilities for this entity, not be aware of the absence of an internal auditor? And if you were not aware, as you are claiming now, did an inquiry, what kind of link between or relationship exists between the EMBD, the Ministry of Finance Investment Division, as well as the Ministry of Agriculture? Something is not connecting. There's a complete breakdown. Because we are being told as a very important committee that there was no internal auditing function and auditor between 2013 and 2015. And when we inquire as to whether the Ministry of Finance Investment Division was aware, they weren't aware. Isn't something wrong there, Mrs. Babb? What is happening? Try to enlighten us, please.
What I could say is that with respect to the internal auditor, I know in 2013, the Ministry of Finance Investment Division, there was an audit done with respect to contracts. And at that time, there wasn't an internal auditor, but I understand sometime afterwards, the person left. Now, when problems, we reviewed the board minutes, different documents that the state enterprises sent to us. Where we see problems, we would write whether it be the chairman, the corporation, so will write the chairman, or the permanent secretary would write the CEO. asking to rectify these problems, put things in place. But with respect to EMBD, we were not getting much responses. What I also know, between the period 2012 to 2015, the board had changed about 3 times. We understand that a lot of staff left. So it was very difficult to get things done at that institution. But we have a new board. We wrote them. They wrote to us, indicating that they are going to put the systems in place to get all the reports done. And we are willing to work with them. And we are taking their word, because they did write us in February this year, say they're going to get all the financial statements done. They're going to get an internal auditor. So we look forward to working with them.
May I ask, do you have a mechanism to identify troubled state enterprises or entities, Mrs. Barb? When a state entity is in trouble, like the EMBD has been in trouble for the years that we are looking at, do you have any internal mechanism that can identify an entity that is in trouble as part of your functions as an investments division?
Chair, when it's been in trouble, we talk about financial trouble or governance trouble. Or governance. Well, through our reporting and the board minutes, you could, reviewing the board minutes, you could get some sense of what is going on in the organization. And when we identify or it comes to our attention, we would normally make a request for our Central Audit Committee to do investigations. And that had happened with EMBD in 2013. But I said, and the committee did make recommendations, but as I said before, there was such a high, from what I understand, it was because they never gave us responses to writing when we write them about what were the problems. But we understand that there were high staff turnover changes, plus we know the board changed several times, so they will always keep probably starting over. So, okay. So, yeah.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have 4 specific questions I would like to ask to the permanent secretary. I am not satisfied that there is an officer with oversight responsibility for EMBD, and that officer is not here this morning, because you would have to rely on that person to provide you with critical information to share with the committee, but that person is not part of your team. Mr. Chairman of the EMBD, I observe that your procurement officer is not here this morning. Someone whom I'm quite sure would have been in a position, Ms. Charlene Thompson, procurement officer. Is that person still in the employ of EMBD? Why isn't that person here this morning? That person is a critical officer who would undoubtedly have information that would have assisted the committee. Yes.
Member, I apologize on behalf of Charlene, who isn't here this morning. Regrettably, she fell ill and could not attend. The intent was for her to be here.
Well, then it takes me to this question. Do you all have a procurement unit in EMBD, or is there simply a procurement officer?
As a new board, we established a procurement officer, and she's assisted by someone.
So you all don't have a unit, simply an officer to begin with?
We have an officer and an assistant. I'm not sure if you consider two persons to be a unit.
No, they're two different things. But I would want to urge you, Mr. Chairman, and your board to ensure that you establish a procurement unit because, of course, you will be mindful of the fact that the procurement legislation will become law within imminently. So it's important that the board pays attention to that. It is very shocking to this committee that EMBD had no auditor for the period 2013 to 2017. Very shocking indeed. I am pleased to, however, hear you say, Mr. Chairman, that an auditor was hired and will be on board within the next 2 weeks. May I inquire whether or not there is an audit committee of the board? Who heads that audit committee?
Ms. Beckles heads the committee, the audit.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, was the committee appointed in keeping with the guidelines of the performance? All right, I see you understood where I'm coming from. Consistent with those guidelines. Now, on page 20 of the document, regarding trade and other payables, we were advised that as of 22nd of March, EMBD owed mainly to contractors $602 million. And there's another $1,183 million being claimed by contractors that have not been certified. And 75% of that $1,344 million relates to a single contractor. We have noted that that matter is before the court. May I inquire the name of that contractor? That does not interfere with the matter before the court.
The name of the contractor, the Malco Construction Services Limited.
Thank you. I also want to relate to the fact that I have observed that there's a high turnover of staff at the EMBD. I'm just trying to identify the page here. Yes. On page 6, under audited financial statements, there is this statement. However, it is recognized that a high employee turnover, lack of follow-up and oversight may have contributed to this situation. That is with regards to the fact that no financial audited reports were submitted on a timely basis for the period 2011 to 2015. I want to link that to what is stated on page 7 under risk management. At present, more than 50% of general staff have been with EMBD for less than 1 year. Further, several senior managerial positions remain vacant, thus limiting the organization's ability to drive its planning, management, and implementation processes forward. Mr. Chairman, against that basis, I would like to be advised what steps have you and your board taken to address this serious deficiency at the senior level of the organization?
Remember, there's 3 key vacancies that exist presently at EMBD. The first being the CEO, and his tenure ended last Friday. Therefore, we need to recruit, and in the interim, Ms. Bengoshe continues to act as the CEO. The office of...
and when is the position of CEO will be advertised?
We anticipate between 4 to 6 weeks. Divisional Manager Corporate Services remains vacant. And again, we expect within 4 to 6 weeks to have that advertisement, please. The Divisional Manager Projects remains vacant. Someone was recruited last year, late last year, and he resigned December 31st, thereabouts. Again, we're streamlining the structure of the organization. However, we anticipate, again, between 4 to 6 weeks that we should have that advert out.
And my final question, Mr. Chairman. I am at Appendix 4 of your document, List of Trade and Other Payables Accounts. I'm seeing a strange kind of nomenclature here that I've never encountered before, and undoubtedly you would be able to assist me in understanding what it means, Mr. Chairman. I've never seen it before, and I'm in the business for over 30 years. What is a VSEP contractor and a VSEP consultant?
Remember, that's just a terminology used to describe a normal person, a construction person. But that was the term that they used because funding was provided under VSEP, and it relates to the VSEP construction program that EMBD does. So it's just using the word VSEP contractor is just a terminology that came forward throughout the years. I'm not sure how it originated, but it seemed to have originated with the source of funding under the VSEP program.
It's completely confusing and misleading. Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that you and your board review that terminology. Completely confusing. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to be able to jump back in here. And I will begin with my last question. I'll revert my question. We were talking about recruitment. I want to be clear. I looked at the accounts available to us, 2008 to 2010, and I found an amazing series of consultancies for a company like EMBD, the volume of consultancies. But here's what. In 2009, the company spent nearly $400,000 on consultancies for executive recruitment, for 2 positions. So all I would ask, Mr. Chairman, is that now that you're looking for a CEO, $400,000, but let me be correct, $388,810 by my calculation, was spent in 2009 on executive recruitment for 2 positions. That is unbelievable. Unbelievable. I can't fathom that kind of money could be spent. But that's 2009. That's history. It's already gone. The horse has bolted. Someone has made a lot of money and has spent it already. So let me come to today. I want to go back to the issue of the audited accounts, Mr. Chairman. You indicated that the company, since you've come on, you've made every effort, very good efforts, to have the accounts completed. My question is how? Because you have stated on the record here that there's no internal auditor. In order for you to do financial accounts, an internal auditor has to be a core part of that process. If the company has had no internal auditor from 2013 to now, hiring one, how could an external auditor come in and there's no internal auditor to talk them through the vouchers or the various payments? That is a standard procedure. So I would like to understand what procedure was followed to allow someone to be able to come in and do audited accounts for you, and there was nobody inside the system to say when a voucher went from the Department A and they made a check, the internal auditor would want to be able to verify and answer the auditor's questions. In the absence of an internal auditor, what happened? How could you get these accounts done? I am confused.
So the accounts for 2011 and 2012, up to 2013, there would have been an internal audit in EMBD. Somewhere along the way, whether it's management or otherwise, they dropped the ball on staying behind the auditors to complete the report. So the audits commenced, but the audit report was not provided. So the period 2011 and 2012, which we've been able to produce and approve by the board, during that time, the auditing firm would have been engaging with the internal auditor.
And the current reports that you indicated will be complete 2013. I'm more interested in 2014 and 2015 accounts. From the time you don't have an internal auditor, I cannot understand the process, so I'm asking for help. I'm not an accountant, but I've served on an audit committee, and I understand the process. The external auditor comes in, and they engage with the company's financial accountant and the internal auditor in order to be able to complete and verify all the various payments and transactions. In the absence of an internal auditor from 2013, what was the procedure that was followed? If you don't have it, I'll accept a response in writing, because someone has to explain to this committee how can you get audited accounts and you had no internal auditor.
Well, other than the fact that we have recently brought on board an internal auditor starting soon, other than that, I don't think that is necessary. I don't want to, say something against what you just said, right? But I don't think it's necessary to have an internal auditor to do an external audit. There are standards. There are standards that address the assessment of work by the internal auditors in any auditing standards, but there are substantive procedures that will suffice in its place. So it's possible to do an external audit without an internal auditor once you liaise with the chief financial officer, the management team, etc.
Mr. Chairman, I'm struggling for words. I heard the response. I respectfully disagree. I have spent many years in internal auditing as a chairman of an audit committee of a major enterprise, and I hear what you say. And if I told that to anyone, I wouldn't be working now. So I accept that, but I understand the situation you're in, that the accounts had to be done, and I would like, through the chair, for the accounting firm who's conducting those accounts to explain to us what was done in order to satisfy the normal requirement that if the auditor, when they come in and they look at the records and they have a query, they would normally go to the internal auditor, who would say, listen, I have looked at this and I have verified this payment. I would like to find out, just for information, through the chair, what was the procedure that was followed, so that I accept what you say, or I just want to be enlightened as to the procedure, so that in future I could be, I could learn. Mr. Chairman, I give him the time I want to allow the other members.
I recognize Dr. Gopi Singh and then Ms. Kojo.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Can I refer the EMBD and the Acting Permanent Secretary to Appendix 4, which my colleague, Mrs. Jennifer Batiste-Primus, alluded to earlier on. And on page 1 of Appendix 4, you have a list of outstanding payments as of Monday, 27 March 2017. And if I'm reading correctly, the list of outstanding payments is approximately $2.206 billion. This is what is being owed now, outstanding, to contractors, and you have a list of the contractors. I see that you have large contractors 31, that is for works valued at greater than 35 million. You have 19 medium contractors for work for between 12 to 35 million, and 65 small contractors for works with 2 to 12 million. That's on page 4. And you have 19 micro contractors for work less than 2 million. And your statement indicated that you have outstanding on page 1 of your Appendix 4, $2.206 billion, with, as had been mentioned, for payment for VSEP contractors, VSEP consultants, agricultural access roads, SLDP, you'll probably need to explain that, fish landing, fence line, road projects, miscellaneous, and estimated legal claims. How do you intend to deal with that situation with the contractors being owed $2.206 billion? And what is the status there? Some have received interim payments, if I read on, and so on. And some, you mentioned, some you have retention and some interim payments made. Could you give us an understanding of what is happening there?
Yes, Mr. Mohammed.
Member, can we provide that response in writing, please?
Pardon, I didn't get you.
Can we provide the response in writing?
Is there any, you don't have the answers now? No, but it's here before you that you put together Appendix 4. You want to be able to provide in writing how you're going to deal with the 2.206 billion payment?
Correct.
Is there a reason for it?
Well, one of the things...
You don't have
one
an
of the
idea?
things,
You're responsible for EMBD, and you have your permanent secretary with you, and you have these contractors who you said that there is an audit going on, a forensic audit. I don't know whether it involves these. Is that the reason why you don't want to give an understanding?
It does include part of our submission here.
But this is for this public
All right,
accounts enterprise committee.
may I?
No, wait, can I just?
Yeah, no, wait. May I suggest that if Mr. Mohammed is proposing that he submits it in writing.
I don't agree with you, Chair.
Well, you may not agree with me, but I'm ruling.
This is, well, you'll rule. I agree with the Chair. Well,
so, no, what I'm saying is that
this is for the national population to understand $2.2 billion is being owed to contractors, and they are suffering. What is EMBD doing about it? The contractors are suffering, the businesses are foreclosing, the banks are repossessing their property. What does EMBD want to do? And you are reporting to the nation. We are a facilitating enterprise, and this is why we brought it in public, not in camera.
Chairman.
So what is it that you want to hide?
Chairman.
Yeah, just
listen. Have to.
But wait, please. I understand what Dr. Gopi Singh is attempting to extract, and I'm suggesting, seeing that you have made the request, that you'd like to put it in writing, which will eventually find its way publicly, because we report to the Parliament, and the public will have access to the information. I would like to ask Dr. Gopi Singh to simply submit to my request.
No, Chairman, I
move
would not submit to your request, but I hear your request. I'm an equal member of this committee, with the chairman being the chairman of the committee. I ask a question. If it befits you not to answer the question, well, you have that, you can adopt that role. But while I ask the question, as I mentioned, hundreds of contractors are on the breadline. They are not being paid. They are suffering. The banks are foreclosing. 3 people called me yesterday to indicate that they have even lost their vehicles that they drive. And so therefore it is the responsibility of EMBD to provide us with an understanding of what you intend to do. Is that too difficult for you to answer?
All right, Shamfa, you want to speak?
Chairman, as an equal member of this committee, I want to say publicly that as members, we have to operate fairly and be seen to operate fairly. We can't provide to one group being interrogated or investigated the ability to provide answers later, and then for another group, corner them in a particular. We have to at least be seen as operating fairly. So I want to place that on the record as an equal member of this committee. Thank you.
All right. May I suggest, I have a few questions that I want to ask.
So I just want to confirm that you're going to provide in writing your answer to how you're dealing with the $2.206 billion that you have outstanding by EMBD. And you have the areas of finance, you have the areas of projects, and you have the different areas that you have to pay. Could you give us that in writing then? I have not submitted to the chairman, but for the sake of carrying on this meeting, we will await your answers as urgent as possible, because this is an urgent matter. This is an urgent matter for the hundreds of contractors that are involved.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, listen, no problem. Mr. Mohammed, you will submit, as you have indicated in writing, the concerns expressed by the member. Okay? I would like to also ask you, because I think we are going to be wrapping up here in a short while. First of all, are you the chairman of Caribbean Airlines?
Yes, I am.
And as chairman of these two, and you're also chairman of this body, I know that you're young and vibrant, and you may have the energy, but what I wanted to ask you is, how are you able to manage your responsibilities of these two companies? You think that you have been doing very well in that area?
Chair, I would leave that for the appointees to determine. I have made a personal commitment to serve to the best of my ability, and I will, again, leave that decision up to the persons who have appointed me to determine whether or not I have functioned effectively and efficiently.
Yeah. Mr. Mohammed, also, being chairman of the EMBD for approximately 16 months, what would you describe as your greatest challenge to date?
One would be coming into an organization that did not provide accounts. No company, no state enterprise, in my personal view, should be handed billions without any sense of accountability. I had an extreme challenge understanding how a state enterprise could operate in that form. And you are spending taxpayers' dollars, and you have a responsibility to the taxpayers of this country to report to them. That's the first difficulty I had in terms of coming to terms why state enterprises behave in this way. The second would be the sheer value of outstanding liabilities to contractors and trying to understand how did we get here? How, as an organization, one can start with a contract at $6 million and end up at $600 million? How can one account for these liabilities that might be hidden in some state enterprise somewhere? Do we really know the true liabilities as a people, as a country? And that, I think, would be the two most surprising things for me, and what I will consider the biggest challenge to resolve.
And could you indicate to this committee, in terms of improvement of the governance structure at EMBD, what would you want to recommend as some of the next steps over the next 3 months as we seek to improve the governance structure under your stewardship for our consideration?
Chair, it's not only for EMBD, but all state enterprises. And as directors, we have a responsibility and a duty. The state enterprises operating manual provides very clearly the responsibilities that directors and organizations should comply with. So I think, first of all, it needs to start at the point where directors accept the responsibility and undertake those responsibilities. And I think if we all follow the requirements of the manual, clearly we would not have been in the position, not just EMBD, but many state enterprises are in today. I will urge that persons who have accepted and having been appointed to offices, that they really make a concerted effort and fulfill the obligations of your office.
May I suggest we wanted to focus specifically and exclusively on the EMBD, and this is why we wanted to get from you what were some of your thoughts as it relates to improving this organization's operations from a governance perspective over the next 3 months. If you could probably, if you don't have the answers now, you can put it in writing for our consideration.
We'd be delighted to submit that in writing.
Yes. All right. Mr. Foster Cummings?
Question to EMBD. I'm going to ask this question in a way not to interfere with your current issue before the court. So I'm going to try and be, I'm not going to zero in any particular contract or issue, but at page 20, you stated that there is $620 million outstanding in terms of certified works, work certified by EMBD, and that there's another claim of 1,183 million or 1.183 billion of claims from contractors that have not been certified, but that as far as the EMBD is concerned, that the works in place relating to the claim of 1.183 billion is really worth 9 million? Is that what am I reading correct here?
Remember, the claim against EMBD would have been for approximately 1.183 million plus interest thereabouts. I think it's in the proximity of maybe 1.3 billion thereabouts. EMBD on that claim admitted that the sums owed to the contractor is $8.9 billion. 8.9 million, sorry.
Is that the answer you're giving to the question I asked earlier on? Because it's the same thing, the 1.186 billion plus the 700
No, this is a
equivalent
different
to that.
question.
So is that the answer?
Yeah, this is a totally different question. I am trying to determine whether what I'm reading here is correct and it's not a typo. There are claims of 1.183 billion from contractors in work. No, from one contractor. And EMBD's position is that in terms of work on site in relation to this claim of 1.1 billion, that it's EMBD saying that it's really $9 million in work.
Yes, that's what we said in our defense, and we've submitted a check to the contractor for the sums that we have admitted.
Is that the matter in court you're speaking about? So there's sub judice now to answer questions on that. But you answered something.
I answered the amounts admitted, which is filed in the court, and that we have paid.
So that formed part of the question I asked you earlier on, because here it is the 1.186 which the member is speaking about as part of the entire 2.206 billion. So on one hand, you're given an answer to that part, and you find it inconvenient to give an answer to the other part. To the whole thing that I ask you about the overall aspect. So I end my case there, Chairman.
Yeah. Yeah. May I suggest that we bring a close to these proceedings at this time? And in doing so, may I ask the distinguished chairman of the EMBD If you'd like at this stage, just make a few closing remarks, and I will bring the curtains down. So I'll now ask the chairman, Mr. Mohammed, if he wants to make any closing remarks.
Chair, EMBD would like to thank the committee for having us this morning as it relates to our operation. We have taken note to the committee's questions and comments and will ensure that they are considered in our further written submissions to this committee. We trust that the committee appreciates that the board and management are committed to the resolution of outstanding issues at EMBD and the implementation of controls to prevent the reoccurrence in the future. We thank you.
Well, may I, on behalf of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee, extend to you, Mr. Mohammed, and to the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries, as well as members of the Investments Division, Ministry of Finance, and also, I think these are the three main entities. Right.
Ministry of Agriculture.
Ministry of Agriculture, yes. May I, as I said, extend our appreciation to your presence here. I want to serve notice that we may have to recall everyone here at some future time, and we may have to go in camera because there were some pieces of information that the Permanent Secretary did indicate she would not like to discuss in the open. And I think it is only fair that we give everyone here an opportunity to discuss matters in camera in the interests of the process that we are engaged in. But the committee will make a determination on that matter at the appropriate time. So once again, thank you very much for being here, and we look forward to future encounters and exchanges with everyone who made themselves available to the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee. I would like to suspend these proceedings at this time, and we invite our colleagues who are part of our committee to make themselves available for a little discussion subsequent to the suspension of these proceedings. So these proceedings are now suspended. Thank you very much.